Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Today we'll be doing the prayers of Vrtrasura. Today is going to be an online-only class. This prayers of Vrtrasura, it's only about 4 shlokas. So hopefully over the next 2 days we will have enough time to delve deep into these wonderful shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we'll all start Mangal Charan first. Om Ajnanathmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vande Aham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrujatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vangsha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevayat Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakte Bhavati Naishtiki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Jai. So today we'll be starting prayers of Vrtrasura. So let us get into it. The first thing we will discuss today is about the location of where these prayers are. So the first thing to remember is these prayers are from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana, the most auspicious literature. The next thing is that this particular prayer is found in Canto 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada has titled this canto, Prescribed Duties for Mankind. And within this Canto 6, there are actually 19 chapters. So in the 19 chapters, the prayers specifically are from the 11th chapter, and they are text number 24 to 27. So 4 shlokas in total, so very simple, but they're very beautiful prayers by Vrtrasura. But if you actually look at the story or the history, I use the word history purposefully because when we use story, people usually think that it's mythological, but this is not mythology, this is real. So it's actually history. And so this episode, this historical episode, is described from the ending of Canto 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam, all the way till, sorry, not Canto 6, I apologize, Chapter 6 of Canto 6. So it begins right at the ending of Chapter 6, and it goes all the way till Chapter 17. So the actual story that the prayers are describing is in that range. But however, the specific prayers that we'll be discussing is in Chapter 11 and from 24 to 27. So this gives us perspective of where these prayers are actually sitting. So the next thing I wanted to discuss was what methodology are we going to use to understand these prayers. So the methodology is going to be threefold. We're going to use 3 methods. So the first method obviously is, verse recitation. That's how Srila Prabhupada has taught us to understand things. We recite the verse. Obviously, the next one is the Bhaktivedanta purports themselves. Srila Prabhupada has written very extensively, and especially in Canto 6, he's written very beautifully. And then, of course, the third methodology we are going to do is we are going to tell this story, this history, in a particular way that it generates excitement in these verses. So now, let's talk about the characters. Now, this word character is very interesting. Character actually, can mean the quality that somebody has. So here, for this particular, analysis, we are going to use 2 distinct characters. Okay? The first characteristic that we are going to discuss about is the protagonist. Now, protagonist, it's for anybody who's into writing or who's into an English literate. This idea of a protagonist is somebody who is the knight, who is the main character within a story. So that's called the protagonist. The word pro means one who is or around whom the whole story is revolving. So protagonist. Then the other character is called antagonist. So an antagonist is a diametric opposition. So this diametric opposition is called the antagonist. And so something interesting is we see this kind of nature play out in the energies of Krishna. There is the spiritual energy, the antaranga shakti, and then there is the material energy, the bahiranga shakti. So the protagonist and the antagonist. So you find that. I purposefully colored these as white and black because the protagonist is usually considered the good. So we generally represent white as good. And the antagonist black. And when we say black, we mean there is something shady. Of course, nowadays, in this modern society, this black and white is taken very, this color depiction is being used in a very negative connotation. Of course, so as devotees, it is not our purpose to show this negativity in terms of, one's color. This is just to give a representation. It doesn't mean that anyone who is black, Krishna is black. We're not saying Krishna is a bad person. So, that appreciation must be there. These colors are being used just to depict 2 things. Just like, sometimes people use red and blue just to depict, various things. Red is used as stop, green is used as go. It doesn't mean we have anything, against red or we have something, favorable towards green. It's just these are the colors that are used. So please consider that. So just to give some idea about the protagonist and antagonist is, usually we consider a protagonist as a hero and the antagonist as a villain. Right? Another characteristic that we find is the fact that the protagonist is a champion. Right? He champions, he has a viewpoint and he pushes that viewpoint. He's a leader. And then of course there is the opposition. The opposition means that opposition could also be a leader. Like, in the parliament you have an opposition leader. But that leader is in a diametric, it has a different view, a diametric opposite view in some cases. And, always clashes with the champion. So now we've discussed about these two characters, right? A character of a protagonist and a character of an antagonist. So now we will actually see two personalities that will represent these characters. So two characters that have these characters. So that's interesting, right? A play on words. So the protagonist here being Indra and the antagonist here being Vrtrasura, right? So we're going to have these two. Now, today our thought, we are going to focus today's session on just the protagonist, on Indra, right? And in tomorrow's session, we will focus on the antagonist, Vrtrasura. So one interesting thing, when Bhaktividya Poon Maharaj was giving a class once, I really liked what he had said, so I had drawn this picture because it was very nice the way he presented it. He said that usually we consider life's decisions to be black or white, good or bad. But most of our dealings in the material world are gray. And he was mentioning that there is no shade in white and black, but there are lots of shades in gray. So when he said that, I went home and I drew this picture just to realize that yes, that is correct. The shading is actually in gray. And so he was explaining that in the dealing there is always gray. Sometimes it's a bit good, sometimes it's a bit bad, and usually there is a mix of it. So that appreciation is there. So like I said, our focus now is going to be using Indra for today's session, to use Indra as the protagonist and describe these wonderful verses that Vrtrasura is going to sing. So the next thing we want to describe is about the scene. So it is always interesting to understand the scene in which these prayers are being said. We see Srila Prabhupada, when he opens up Bhagavad Gita, he has this, in the introduction, he has this chapter called Setting the Scene. So I like the way he wrote, Srila Prabhupada wrote that word, setting the scene. And the reason why he says that, it is important for us as devotees to understand the scene, because when we have the scene, we have the mood of how the prayers are being told. So that is why that is important. So here you can see in this beautiful picture, again, I should mention this, all of these pictures have been taken from the BBT archives. So all glories to BBT and to the wonderful artists who have drawn these pictures. I take zero credit in any of these pictures, so I just want to mention that. These are all BBT's pictures, very beautiful pictures. So this particular picture is about, if you see on the left side, you see this big, humongous person. His name is Vrtrasura. And it is explained this Vrtrasura had this very powerful trident. Right? We actually see this trident is used by Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva actually has this trident to depict the fact that the three gunas, right? Lord Shiva, he is the master because he is the husband of Maya Devi. So he is the master of the three modes of material nature. But however, Srila Prabhupada explains, and our acharyas also explain, that Lord Shiva, although he is not covered by the material nature, but because he is dealing with the material nature, he falls under the influence. So he's not covered by it, but he does fall under the influence. So that appreciation is there. So we see here this big, humongous, what do you call, asura, this big, humongous villain by the name Vrtrasura. He's on the left side. If you see on the bottom in his feet, you see all of those small beings. They're actually the demigods. And they are the army of the demigods who are trying to fight with Vrtrasura. So you can see his massive size. It is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam that when Twashta did his yagya and he invoked Vrtrasura to come out, that every day Vrtrasura would grow. He would double in size. So you can only imagine how big he would be. So in this scene, you can see that Vrtrasura has hit the elephant of Indra by the name Airavata. And because he's been hit by Vrtrasura, the elephant has fallen back 14 yards, and Indra himself has fallen down from the elephant. So at this point, Indra feels very dejected, and so do all the demigods. They feel very dejected that Vrtrasura has defeated us. So at this point, Vrtrasura, actually, this is the scene in which he tells these prayers. So you can imagine the scene. There are two competitors, and the competition is going on. One competitor has pushed the other competitor down, and he's standing on top of him. And it is at that moment, at that very moment, when this personality is lording over the other competitor, that these prayers are sung. So now we'll go to the prayers. So the very, sorry, I forgot to mention that the focus of our story today will be on Indra. So we are going to, all the shlokas, the 4 shlokas, we are going to speak with Indra as being the background of, the character on which we will define these shlokas. So now we'll go to the first shloka, which is Canto 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11, text 24. So first I will sing the shloka. Aham hare tava padaikamula. I'll repeat again. So I'll repeat each line twice, so that it's very nice. Aham hare tava padaikamula dasanudaso Bhavitasmi bhuya mana smareta supater gunamste grinita vak karma karo tukaya. So one more time. Aham hare Tava padaikamule dasanudaso bhavitasmi bhuya mana smareta supater gunamste grinita vak karma Karotu kaya. So now we'll do the translation of this wonderful shloka. So the translation goes, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants, who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. So, something very interesting in this translation by Srila Prabhupada is that he has question marks on these translations. It's this competitor, we were talking about, this competitor is lorded over his competition. His competition is fallen on the floor. And at this time, this personality who has lorded over, right? Who's lording over, not lorded over, who's lording over, right? This personality, Vrtrasura, is singing these beautiful prayers. Aham hare tava padaikamula. So padaikamula means one who is the servant of the lotus feet, sitting at the lotus feet of Krishna. So we have Srila Prabhupada. His name is also Prabhupada. So Prabhupada is explained the 2 meanings. He says, one, in whose lotus feet great Prabhus sit. So, you all have, during this lockdown, been hearing a lot of, lectures by wonderful Vaishnavas, right? And you see, man, they are so knowledgeable. And then you see, yes, they are all sitting at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. So that's why he's Prabhupada. And the other name also is that he sits on the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is interesting how, the name has both the connotations, it has both the meanings. So here we can see there is another name, Padaikamula. So Padaikamula is a servant of the lotus feet of Lord Hari, of Lord Krishna. So here, Vrtrasura is asking a question. So this question, the Sanskrit word for this is Bhavitasmi, Bhuyaha. Bhavitasmi means, will the time come in the future that I can, that I can get this position? So that's why there is the question. So that's why you'll see in this translation by Srila Prabhupada, he puts the question mark. He asks that question. O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant. Right? So the next thing is that he is now requesting that he wants to be a servant of the devotee of Krishna, Dasanu Daso. Why? So that his mind can constantly be thinking of Krishna's transcendental attributes. And so that his words can keep glorifying those attributes, and his body may always be engaged in the loving service of Krishna. So by having the association of the devotee, he can get this. So now we've done a quick rundown of this shloka. Now we will start the story of Indra and how Indra got into this. So we are still on this shloka, SB 61124, but it's just for us to understand. So Indra, he was, he had gained victory over the demons. There was no one to challenge his rule, and he was extremely happy. He was extremely joyful and extremely proud. Right? This was around the time of Satya Yuga. It is explained in the future, within these chapters, that was actually around the time of Satya Yuga when this had happened. So at that time, the kings were very noble. They were called Rajarshis. Rajarshi means a king who is as good as a rishi. So very noble kings and emperors, but very noble. So it is at that time that Indra was ruling over, and so therefore Indra's strength had also grown. Like he had become very powerful. And so it is explained very wonderfully in the beginning of this presentation by Sukadeva Goswami about how Indra was living in a very lavish situation. He was very lavish. So today morning in the Bhagavatam class I was mentioning Srila Prabhupada's altar, like the devotees who set it up, looking extraordinarily beautiful. It's so lavish, so wonderful. So imagine Indra had such a lavish situation, such a beautiful state. So in this lavish position, right, we see Indra, right? He gets carried away by his externals. And so in this position, we see Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the guru of Indra. It is by the blessings of Brihaspati, by the teachings of Brihaspati, right? And by the policies expressed by Brihaspati, that Indra has now been established as this powerful king. So by his teachings, by his blessings, and by his policies. Ashir namaskriya vastu nirdeshu. And so by Indra following these things, Mangal, like auspiciousness takes place. And so we see Indra is now in this wonderful position. And so here is something interesting for us to meditate on. That sometimes we may come into a situation, right? We may come into a situation which is grand, which is grand. But at the same time, we must not lose track or get deviated from that position. Not from that, but by that position. By that. So that is why Narad Muni says, Sarva upadi vinir mukta. So he says, you must give up an upadi. You must give up the position. And so that is interesting for us. So we are going to see the example of why we must do this in this wonderful story of Indra. So Indra, he is in this state. His guru walks in. Now, in the enjoyment of his success, he does not offer the right respect to his guru. And because of this, Brihaspati immediately leaves the assembly hall. And when this happens, Indra immediately realizes his mistake. He says, oh no, I made a mistake. Oh. And then he curses himself for getting carried away by his position, and then goes out and searches for Brihaspati. But because Brihaspati has now seen, people like Brihaspati, they are able to see the destiny unfolding. So Brihaspati realizes that Indra's time is not going to be good, and because he has disrespected his guru, so Brihaspati vanishes. Right now, one may consider that why would a guru vanish? Like a disciple is looking, why guru vanished? He says sometimes these things are required for the betterment of the disciple. The vanishing of the guru is sometimes required for the betterment of the disciple. Sorry, when I use the word vanishing, I'm not talking in the sense of like a magician. I'm talking in the sense of one is not able to get the relevant mercy of the guru. Of course, we see Srila Prabhupada. That is why we call Srila Prabhupada Jagat Guru. Because Srila Prabhupada is so unique that he is such a wonderful guru that he is available both in the Vapu and Vani. So if we want to have association with Srila Prabhupada, we can read his books. One good thing that has come from this whole lockdown, that like my reading has gone up by maybe 200% or 300%. Before I used to read a little bit, now I'm reading even more. Just, because, you're at home, you don't have much to do, so you're reading. And so, in reading, you're getting association of Srila Prabhupada. So, this is one thing unique about the difference of Vaishnava, that how Vaishnava is considered topmost, and why Vaishnava is considered topmost. And this is one of the examples that Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj gives in explaining why a Vaishnava is higher than a Brahmana. Because the Vaishnava's mercy is, unlimited. And it's causeless, just like Krishna. Just like Krishna is causeless, the mercy of a Vaishnava is causeless. So we see that in Srila Prabhupada, his causeless mercy. So, back to the story we were mentioning. So then, because the guru has vanished, Indra is now extremely sad that, what can I do? My guru has vanished. So it is at this point that Brahma, he comes to Indra's aid. Sorry, this is a bit loud. He comes to Indra's aid, and then as he sees Indra's sad situation, Brahma tells Indra, my dear Indra, you have made a mistake by being too proud. Now, here is the solution. The solution is that you go and meet Vishwarupa. And by meeting Vishwarupa, you will find a personality who will regain your position. And the reason why he says this, I forgot to mention this, is while Indra was going away, the demons had attacked and they had taken over the heavenly regions. So, this fight between the Suras and the Asuras, it's a constant affair. So, even up to Brahma Loka, there can be problems. Like we see Mother Ganga, and I forget King Shantanu's name, his previous name, but it's there in Mahabharata that they were actually sitting in the assembly of Brahma, and then when they came in and the wind blew, and so Mother Ganga's clothes loosened up a little bit. So naturally, all the demigods there immediately put their head down, because out of great respect for Mother Ganga. But King Shantanu did not. And so for this reason, Brahma cursed him and says, you go down now, back to the material world. So even in Brahma Loka, there's a problem. Right? So the issues are there. So naturally, in heavenly regions, which are even lower than Brahma Loka, these problems will exist. So the demons have taken over. Indra is morose. So Brahma says, go to Vishwarupa. Ask him to become your Purohita. Srila Prabhupada mentions very beautifully the word Purohita. He says Purohita means one who is, hita means one who does, who gives benefit, right? And Puro means one who can be related to your family. That's one of the examples Srila Prabhupada gives. So Purohita means that one who can give benediction because he's related to the family, like a family priest. And the interesting thing is Vishwarupa, he was actually related to the demigods. So there is that familial relationship. And so as the story unfolds, like the story is going to be unfolding, we actually see that the way this description begins of this story is that Sukadev Goswami is giving a brief description of the generations coming from Daksha, Kashyapa, and his 13 wives. A lot of wives. Kashyapa had a lot of wives. I think 13 were just Daksha's daughters, and then there were I think a few more. So lots of wives. And in the description of this genealogy, Sukadev Goswami just happens to say that, and then Vishwarupa became the guru of Indra after Indra insulted Brihaspati. And Parikshit caught on to that, and then he asked, can you please explain the story to me? And so that's how we enter this story. Yeah. So it's very interesting how everything ties up. So anyway, Indra then agrees, and all the demigods, they go to Vishwarupa, they bow down to him and say, please help us. Please give us shelter, and please become our Purohita. And so then Vishwarupa, he agrees. Of course, initially he says that I'm so young, how can I do? But then they encourage him and say, no, you are related to us, and you're a family member, you're a brahmachari, you're a brahmana, you should help us. So of course Vishwarupa then agrees. And the interesting thing is Vishwarupa had 3 heads. So he was a 3-headed brahmana. So that's another interesting aspect of the story. So then we see Vishwarupa, what he does is he actually provides this Narayana Kavach. He applies Narayana Kavach on Indra's body. And by putting this Narayana Kavach, he makes Indra's body, like a thunderbolt, like unbreakable. And so this is very interesting that actually, as I was reading that Narayana Kavach, I was thinking, wow, during these times of COVID, maybe devotees can do this so that, and of course, we are not doing this to protect our body, but we are thinking that maybe with this body we can help do some service. So in that mood, of course, it depends what mood we use it in. But in the mood of I want to use this body in the service of Krishna, one can use this Narayan Kavach. And so it's explained that we do Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Narayanaya Namaha, Om Vishnave Namaha. So like that, all the various glorifications of Narayana given, and then different body parts are touched upon, so one can get protection. And then of course you also have all the various weapons of Vishnu that are basically helping to protect us from all directions, from the time factor. So it was very, very intriguing, this whole Narayan Kavach, this whole chapter that is dedicated on Narayan Kavach. So I definitely recommend devotees to read it. We just don't have enough time to go through these sections. But the idea was that by the mercy of Vishwarupa and by the teachings of Vishwarupa, by having this kavach in his body, Indra became very strong. And it is interesting, my Guru Maharaj was mentioning that if you apply the 12 tilaks, then even if you don't physically apply them, just with water, just apply it. It's very quick, Keshavaya Nama, Narayana Nama, Madhavaya Nama, Govindaya Nama, Vishnavaya Nama, Madhusudana. So very quickly we can put the 12 tilaks. And when we put the 12 tilaks on the body, this acts like a kavacha. So yeah, this is also like a Narayan Kavach. We take all the names of Vishnu. So it's also like a Narayan Kavach. So yeah, that was something interesting. So the reason why I was telling this story in relation to this shloka number 24 is because in this shloka we are talking about how one can use his mind, his words, and his body to engage in devotional service. So here we actually see Indra's body gets hardened up by this thunderbolt, by this Narayan Kavach, because of Vishwarupa's mercy. And then Indra goes, he fights, he defeats the demon, and then he encourages Vishwarupa to please do a big yagya and offer oblations, right? to, of course, the Yagya Purusha being Krishna himself. And so, by doing that offering, Vishnu will get pleased, and naturally the demigods will get more strength. So this was Indra's idea. And so now, however, in this situation, something not so palatable happens. So we'll go to the next shloka and then we'll discuss that. So we're now in text number 25. Nanaka prishtham na cha parameshtyam na sarvabhaumam na rasadipatyam na yoga siddhe apunarbhavam va samanjasastva virahaya kangshe. One more time. Nanaka prishtham na cha parameshtyam na sarvabhaumam na rasadipatyam na yoga siddhe apunarbhavam va samanjasastva virahaya kangshe. Beautiful shloka. So now we'll do the translation. It says, O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. Whoa. Imagine a demon telling all this. It's quite extraordinary, right? It's quite extraordinary. So here we actually see that, in continuing with the theme of explaining the shlokas, with the behavior of Indra, we actually see that Indra, here the shloka is saying, na naka prishtam nacha parameshtyam, that I do not desire to enjoy Dhruvaloka or any heavenly regions like Lord Brahma's abode. But when we actually think about Indra, right? Indra got this, thunderbolt. Indra got, a personality like, Vishwarupa to help him to become his Purohita, right? And he's doing all of this because he actually wants all of these things. So he actually has the desire. Here we are saying na. Na means I do not. But when we see in this story, in the presentation of this protagonist, Indra is the protagonist, he is the good guy. We see that he has all these desires, right? And so it is interesting that this desire causes him to do something wrong. So what actually happens is, as Vishwarupa is offering his oblations, he is, loudly saying, Indraya Swa, for Lord Indra, I'm offering these oblations. For Lord Agni, I'm offering these oblations. For this demigod, I'm offering these oblations. And everybody is very pleased. But through his other mouth, because he had 3 heads, he was a 3-headed Brahmana. Through his other mouth, and very, very quietly, he was also offering oblations for the demons or for the asuras. And the reason he was doing this is because he had familial relationship with the demigods and from the demons. So his father, Twashta, he is from the lineage of the demigods. But his mother, she was from the lineage of the demons, from the asuras. So, because he had familial relationship, remember, he was asked to become the Purohit by enticing the family relationship. Right? He was told that, you are related to us as part of the demigod family. Please become our Purohita. But in the same mood, he was also related with the Asuras. So then, recognizing that the Devtas would not be too happy, he politely offered, or quietly offered oblations to the Asuras as well. Now Indra found out. And when Indra found this out, he got extremely angry. He got extremely displeased. And his displeasure is so astounding that he simply takes up his sword and he chops off the head of the three. Sorry, my phone's ringing. He chops off the head, the three heads of the Brahmana Vishwarupa. Now this is quite an extraordinary thing. Now one has to appreciate that, look at Indra's anger. Here is a personality who converted his body into a thunderbolt by giving him the Narayan Kavach, gave him the strength to defeat the demons, and despite that, Indra simply chops the head off of the Brahmana. Now, we are not saying that what Vishwarupa did was correct or wrong. What we are talking about is about a protagonist. So remember, the story, the theme that we are going with is we are following Indra. So we are trying to understand the journey Indra has taken, right? So that is the idea here. We are trying to see this journey. Now, this anger we can even see in Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu gets so angry that he finally pulls out his sword, holds the hand of his 5-year-old boy. My son is 5 years old. I was just imagining how much anger must, Hiranyakashipu had, how much anger would have been generated in his heart that he was ready to chop the head off of his son, a 5-year-old son. So, we can appreciate that same wrath, that same anger is also there in Indra. And Indra just, he enacts on it and he chops the head off of the Brahmana. And the reason why I point this out is, in these contexts, we will not see any difference between the Devas and the Asuras. Both get angry and both get embroiled by their anger. Today morning we had the Bhagavatam class. Here you go. It's written right there. So, Rosha Drishtya Rosham Dahantam. So means through the eyes of the wrath, but one gets enveloped in the wrath. So, that is interesting to see. And so why is it that Indra did this? Because he got worried that now the demons will become strong. So he chops the head off of Vishwarupa. Ooh, time's running fast. I have to do 2 more shlokas. So one key point I wanted to make here was, we see that the Soma Rasa has been drunk by Vishwarupa. And we also see that in the Mohini avatar, or in the churning of the ocean, that this rasa, when it touches the nectar, the amrita, when it touches the neck of Rahu and Ketu, right? When it happens to the demons, when their heads get chopped off, the demons, they don't give up their body. They say, no, we won't give up our body. Instead, he gets the blessing that he will chase sun god and he will eat sun god, right, at appropriate times. That's why you have solar eclipse. So it is explained that that's the benediction given to Rahu, because obviously the guy has to live, he has to stay. But here we actually see the Brahmana, when his head is chopped off, his heads, he takes the form of birds or partridges, and he takes the form of the birds and he goes away. Now he had the knowledge, he had the strength, he could have brought himself back. We are talking about Vishwarupa here, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he accepts his fate. Of course, because he has been drinking Soma Rasa, so then naturally, there is benediction. Life has value. So then each of his heads, take forms of birds and they go. And it is actually this is in I think in Canto 12. I think 11 or 12. I think it's in Canto 12. Yeah, sorry. This is in the end when Suta Goswami is winding up. He's actually explaining that how these partridges, they actually eat the Vedas, and that's how the Tatitriya Upanishad comes out, because the Tititris, they actually mean the birds, partridges. So that's interesting. Sorry, that's a complete sidetrack. Back to what we were discussing. So this is something interesting. You see the difference between how a demon like Rahu behaves. He doesn't want to give up his body and he wants to attack the Devas. And here you see Vishwarupa, because he had the benediction, instead he takes the form of the birds and then he flies off. Right? So you see the difference of quality. Now, of course, the reason why I mentioned that is about this whole, we are saying now Yogi Siddhi, but you can see the Yoga Siddhi of Vishwarupa. Now, when Indra does this, he realizes that he's made a mistake. And so for 1 year, he actually suffers. He suffers for 1 year of the sinful reaction of killing a Brahmana. But then finally, he spreads his sins amongst the trees, the land, the water, and the women. And so because all four of these personalities agree to accept this, a quarter of the sin of Indra, right? So Indra spreads this sin away, and that's how he cleanses himself of the sin of killing a Brahmana. But here in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, that sin can be by quenched simply by doing one circumambulation of Tulsi Devi with devotion. Right? And of course, that doesn't mean that you go kill a Brahmana, come out, come back, circulate, go out, kill again. That's not the idea. The idea is to say, if one has done a mistake in anger, uncontrollably, come, ask for forgiveness, go, circumambulate Srimati Tulsi Maharani, and she will ensure that our Bhakti Lata Bij is protected. So, we are always grateful to Tulsi Devi for helping us out there. And so now what happens is, when this news travels to Twashta, so, Twashta, this news comes to Twashta. Twashta is the father of Vishwarupa. He gets extremely annoyed. He says, how could Indra do this? My son did so much for him. He killed my son. I will do a yajna now. Now, the reason why I'm explaining all of this is, remember when we began the talk, we were talking about how in every story there's a protagonist and there's an antagonist. We will now start seeing the grey part, like which Bhaktividya Purna Maharaj is mentioning, the shades of grey. How a person may be good, but then they end up doing something bad. A person may be bad, but they end up doing something good. So we'll see that mix of all of this, right? So here Twashta, he does a big yagya, right? And from the yagya, he says the word Indra Shatru, right? So Indra Shatru. Now, what he wanted to say was, from the fire, come out, O enemy of Indra. Indra, Shatru. Shatru means enemy. But what happened was, when he was doing the mantras, he pronounced it long. He said, Indra Shatru. So instead of saying, come out of this fire, O enemy of Indra, he said, come out of this fire, O whose enemy will be Indra. So the way it's explained is, O enemy of Indra. Instead now it becomes Indra Shatru. So Indra becomes a possessive. In Sanskrit grammar, Indra becomes a possessive. So he says, Indra, one who is your enemy. Indra Shatru. So Indra is your enemy, the one who's coming out. So anyway, mispronunciation, Srila Prabhupada mentions that is why one should not be interested in all of this. It says simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we don't get into all of this, right? I'm actually running out of time, so I'll go to the next shloka. Text number 26. Ajata paksha eva mataram khaga sanyam yatha vatsatara shudartha priyam priye vyushitam visanna manoravindaksha didrekshate tvam. One more time. Ajata paksha eva mataram khaga stanyam yatha vatsatarak shudhartha priyam priyeva vyushitam visanna manoravindaksha didre shate tvam. O lotus-eyed Lord, as baby birds that have not yet developed their wings always look for their mother to return and feed them, as small calves tied with ropes await anxiously the time of milking, when they will be allowed to drink the milk of their mothers. Or a morose wife whose husband is away from home always longs for him to return and satisfy her in all respects. I always yearn for the opportunity to render direct service unto you. So this is very beautiful. The mood here is, taking the concept of longing, the mood of separation, vipralamba, right? And then saying, I am in that vipralamba because I want to serve you, Krishna. Nowadays, because of this COVID, we'll see a lot of devotees amongst us. We feel, man, we got to come to the temple. it was Janmashtami midnight, so I sneaked outside, but of course all the doors are locked, so please don't sneak into the temple. I was not sneaking in, I just came. Anyway, I shouldn't mention it, but anyway, I came, so I was like, okay, Jai Radha Gopinath, and then I went back. But you feel, you're like, hey, man, it's a festival, we got to be in the temple. So anyway, you feel sometimes. So you yearn for the opportunity to render direct service, So anyway, the point here being, the idea here is that when, Twashta got, angry, and he creates this amazing demon. This demon is named Vrtrasura. Vrta means one who covers everything. So that's how humongous he was. We remember in the picture, in the scene, he was humongous, amazing character, big. So Vrtrasura. So this Vrtrasura, he comes to attack Indra. Now the problem here is that Indra, now he's realized his mistake. Man, first I, insulted my guru, right? And my guru, left from my, he has become invisible. I can't find him. And now, I killed a Brahmana. What am I doing? So this is one thing interesting about the Devas. Now, sometimes we may think that, Indra doesn't have good qualities. Actually, he has very good qualities. He's able to recognize his mistake, and he then contemplates how to fix it. See, this is Sakama Bhakta. So he has desires, but he accepts that I made a mistake, and therefore I should take the shelter of Krishna. So when Vrtrasura comes to attack, then the Indra, along with all the demigods, they immediately turn to Lord Hari, to Krishna, and say, my dear Krishna, Trahimam, protect me, O Krishna. So because of this intense prayer of protection, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport very beautifully that Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. So Krishna will come. He will come to save the sadhus. So actually the demigods are sadhus. Indra, like although we are hearing all these stories of Indra, he's actually a sadhu. He's actually a good person. Right? If Indra was to come here today, we will think like, man, this white angel. Right? Because, in Kali Yuga, look at us. Right? We are, worthless. So actually Indra is a sadhu. So then Lord Hari arrives there. Now Lord Hari is the same Lord Hari who saves Gajendra. That same form of Hari. Krishna arrives there, he's standing on Garuda. Standing on Garuda with his beautiful 8 arms. This unique form of Krishna. Like very wonderful and unique form. And so this Hari, this form of Hari is there. And so, so this form of Hari, sorry, we're running out of time. So form of Hari is there. And so this form of Hari, we have to, we actually see this form of Hari. Sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts again because time is running out. I'm trying to see what I should say. Okay, so first is that Hari actually is here to take away all the material desires. But Lord Hari has come in front of the demigods, and demigods are asking, please protect us, please save our kingdom. So instead of actually asking Krishna for prema, they're asking for protection. So this shloka, here we are saying that longing we should have is not for the longing for material stuff. We should have that longing for spiritual love. Like in the previous shloka, we were saying, I don't want this, material kingdom. But the demigods, Lord Hari is there, they're saying, please protect our kingdom. Please protect us and our kingdom. So that mood is, different. So immediately Lord Krishna says this, your mood is not right. Because your mood is not right, therefore my advice to you is that you go to my devotee, Dadiyancha, or his name is also the horse head, Ashwasira, right? Ashwasira, the horse head. And because we are running out of time, then we will do the rest of the story tomorrow. I'll at least finish the last shloka because I wanted to do 4 shlokas and talk about the story of Indra. So we'll at least do text number 27 and then we'll wind up and then we will continue the story. Mamottama shloka janeshu sakhyam samsara chakre brahmatasva karmabhi tvanmayayatmadmajadharageshva grinita vakarma karotu khaya. One more time. Mamottama shloka janeshu sakyam samsara chakre brahmatasva karmabhi tvanmayayatmadmajadharageshva grinitava karma karotu kaya. Translation. O my Lord, my Master, I am wandering throughout this material world as a result of my fruitive activities. Therefore, I simply seek friendship in the association of your pious and enlightened devotees. My attachment to my body, wife, children, and home is continuing by the spell of your external energy. But I wish to be attached to them no more. Let my mind, my consciousness, and everything I have be attached only to you. So, here we will see this idea that one has attachments, but one wants to give up that attachment and instead turn attachment to Krishna. Not that we are saying we are completely detached, I don't like anybody. No, we are saying, okay, instead of liking the material world, we take our likings and we spiritualize it. Srila Prabhupada uses the word Krishnaize. We will Krishnaize it. So that is the idea, that switchover is what we are discussing. So we will end here and we will continue the story. I hope I have enough time to finish. Okay, so yeah, we were going to go through the story, but I have not finished the story. So anyway, we'll conclude here and we'll pick it up tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrind ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Go.